interesting, I guess. So yeah, anyway, good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to meeting you guys all, and thank you so much for having me here today to introduce or maybe to take you to a virtual trip to Indonesia in 30 minutes or maybe more than that. I don't know. So I believe you guys have heard about Indonesia and maybe have been there before. I don't know, maybe. But for your information, Indonesia is the fourth largest population country in the world. And having those huge numbers actually in line with the multi-diverse cultural and richness in the country. And so before we get into the presentation, what we have, like I got it in YouTube. It is a video of a wonderful Indonesia by the Ministry of Tourism of Indonesia. And yeah, let's just jump in.
For thousands of years, people have cherished the many wonders of these enchanted islands, inspiring histories of the land below the wind. Astounding relics from prehistoric times are testament to the wondrous age-old cultures. Here, fascinating indigenous folkways live through the test of time, emphasizing the resilience of local creativity and vigor. Magnificent divine temples adorn the landscape, as if forming an exhibition of pervasive spirituality. Religion has always been the cornerstone of life since ancient times. Indigenous wisdoms are traditionally practiced in pursuance of living in harmony with nature, filling the hearts of both hosts and visitors. Funeral rites is a festivity, as much as it is a celebration of life, an occasion to gather family members from all over the world. Rich architectural heritage, shaped by diverse cultural, historical, and geographical influences, recognized as one of Indonesia's true national treasures. Today's legacy of art and craft continues to enrich the culture, playing a significant role in the daily and ceremonial life of the people, adapting wonderful traditional art form to modern times, resulting in popular tourist attraction. Keeping remarkable folk artistic expression alive. As they are embodiment of the locals' way of life. Astounding cultural and historical diversity, where various cultures have crossed paths for many centuries. Impressive variety of numerous ethnic groups. An interwoven history of Indonesia's beautiful diversity. Cultural history unfolds in the landscape. Wonderful Indonesia.
Okay, so this is it, wonderful Indonesia. Well, my topic is actually about Indonesia between the language of environment or nature and the Ancestor. But I want to like have more like general highlight before I jump into the detail. But I don't know if you guys, what comes to your mind first when you hear about Indonesia. Maybe some of you will think about Bali because Bali is the most famous island in Indonesia. But it's actually, Indonesia is more than Bali. It's a home for more than 270 million people. And is that most of them like 51% of them living in urban area like in Jakarta. So Jakarta is the capital city of Indonesia, located in Java Island, and the population is around 10 million of people. And then the characteristic of them are globalized, modern, and schooled society, since they have higher education level compared to those in the other part of Indonesia, and because they live there for job and better life. Also, there are many urban population in Jakarta. However, Indonesia, again, is not only about Jakarta. It's a country, well, I think it's the most of the, the highest, the great marine country. Yeah, the big marine country in the world, because it stretched from the northwest part of Indonesia, which is Sabang over there. It's a small island in the west part of Indonesia, through the the southeast part of Indonesia, which is Merauke, located in Papua Island. So this is Indonesia from the Google Earth. And so look, in those big region, we have 34 provinces, and then divided into regencies and cities with their own local governance. But then in each of the regency and city, they also have like sub-district governments with their own local governance. And so the the population is actually coming from 1,300 tribes, according to the National Central Bureau of Statistics. And they actually speak more than 700 local languages. But then from those huge number of local language, we have one single national language called Bahasa. So Bahasa is our national language. And from 1,300 tribes, we actually have several of racial or races in Indonesia, but the majority of them are Malay, Japanese, and Melanesian or Papuan. So Malay are those who are living in the west part of Indonesia, mainly in Sumatra and Kalimantan. And Javanese is the majority of the race of Indonesia living in Java Island. And those who are living in the eastern part of Indonesia, which me, we are Melanesian or Papuan with different skin tone color. We have like more like brown color compared to those living in the west part of Indonesia. And we kind of share the similarities with those who are living in the Pacific region, like also like in Australian population. But then, as I mentioned before, I want to highlight one of our richness components in our country, which is language. So from the 700 something local language that we have in Indonesia, the people see language is as more than just a medium of regular communication. Well, Bahasa takes place to unite the diversity among us, but then those local languages that actually play a major role in defining local identity, but also to preserve the heritage that inherent by our ancestor, and then actually to the lives of the human being in the places. I come up with two main ideas, I guess. Basically, I've tried to find some literature talking about how language plays an important role in Indonesia, but then it turns out that there is, I think, this topic is not much often talked or done by some researchers before. So it's kind of hard to find the literature, but based on my experiences and because I worked before with the tourism department, so I kind of know like how language actually like plays so much fundamental roles in society, and one of them is the spiritual interaction with the nature. As I mentioned before, like for Indonesian, nature is one of the closest entity that they tend to interact in the daily life, and so they try to connect they try to build a connection with the nature and live side by side with it by having the interaction among all the creators, including non-human creators. So basically, language is kind of a way where human and non-human entities can speak to each other. And as a country where religion holds many fundamental roles, these local languages provide the way in which the believers are worshiping nature. I mean, I tried to find the proper word to describe worshiping. It's not like worshiping, but like, appreciating the nature, or like try to, communicate with the nature. And oh yeah, I think about a couple of days ago, I think it's around 14th of March, in Indonesia, the Hindu population in Bali, they have like spiritual ceremony called Yapi. It's a day of silence, a day in which there are no human activity allowed on that day. So people are not allowed to go to work or do any activities associated with their daily routines. Also, there's no electricity at all. And so even the airport is closed for that day. And it's actually, maybe for some Indonesian, it's just a ceremonial of religion kind of thing. But if you look at the more deeper way, we can see like this is a part of the way how the indigenous people, try to conserve the nature or the earth, by because a movie tries to reveal this fact that Nyepi combines the spiritual and ritual energy to balance, to create balance in life, where nature is believed to be restoring itself. So in that day, for about 30,000 tons of carbons are kept from the atmosphere. This is really, for me, this is really interesting, because maybe people are not really aware of this fact, but it exists in the society, in the traditional way of life of the society. And it's also reduced the island's daily emission by a third. So yeah, this is how, and Nyepi itself, it consists of particular ceremonial or rituals that is actually including the communication, or between the people with their ancestor and their gods. So there is a way, there's a way of communication happening in ceremonial. And so another part that I also highlight over here is the language of Ancestor. So it's not only the way, language is not only serve the way to communicate with the nature, but also the Ancestor. It's kind of more like a mystical thingy, but this is how Indonesian people believe. So I have a video, long video, but I just pick the part where you can see like how the people there try to communicate with Ancestor when it comes to trying to open up a land to farming.
Zaman dulu udah ada. Hanya itu.
Zaman dulu tidak ada kabut asap.
Tidak ada.
Jadi sekarang apa yang terjadi, Pak? Kenapa Kalimantan kabut asap sih?
Jadi oleh karena banyak perusahaan-perusahaan yang ada di mana-mana. Zaman dulu kan tidak ada, perusahaan tidak ada. Tapi sejak adanya perusahaan itulah yang terjadi kabut asap dan lain sebagainya, tanah kebakaran hutan segala itu.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bangun Datu Gandum nyebelang tanah pendempasat tunduk kalian tanah luar tanah mengguyukan tusut nak merah kelaburan tanah tahu tanah kemari tanah pulau garing.
Jelas dalam adat ini mengatakan bahwa dalam berladang saja masyarakat Dayak itu meminta, sebetulnya kita hanya meminjam saja, bahwa lahan itu sebetulnya tidak dimiliki, tapi kita hanya meminjam saja dalam apa yang disampaikan oleh para dukun adat tadi.
Kurang siya nung siya ngambil kampit tay buah marau. Makanya julang ngalakau kupatik kuan lumpang panjang galas panu. Kuan acak keluar. Kerap kok kerapit kambutan sepanat kekop.
Semua adat kayak laksanakan. Karena semenjak Andi merimbang kayak ini baru melaksanakan ritual adat ini harus kita terima semua jalai kendawangan dan saguan.
Yeah, so that's how like the indigenous people in Indonesia try to communicate with the ancestor, asking for actually permission to the use of the land. So even to do the farming, they have to through some ritual ceremony to ask for a blessing, so that the land that is used could be protected by the spirits of the ancestor. And so, as I mentioned before, not only that language serves as a spiritual way of interaction, Indonesians believe that local language also help people to communicate with their ancestor through some traditional rituals that I shown previously. But here's the thing: even if we have 700 something local language, but then inside the tribunal society, they also have specific language to interact with the ancestor, to do the rituals. They call it bahasa tanah or ground language. That is mostly, and I think only spoken by the traditional leaders, the older people of the village. By having this conversation, the people believe that they will keep nature safe by guidance from the ancestor. So language is not only language, but it's like a sacred part of the community. And I believe the local languages matter because of these three main points that I have. The first one is actually to help identifying the differences among the huge number of ethnic communities in Indonesia and recognizing their identities. But it's also a way to translate the voices of nature through spiritual intimacy with the indigenous that eventually will help nature to be alive. And also it's a legacy preservation. So it's a way, when we use the local language, it means that we try to respect and preserve the traditional heritages that built and inherited by our predecessors. However, as the more globalized the world, those languages are threatened at the extinction. And as a result, the interaction between those components, even, human and non-human, likely to diminish, to diminish. I have three main challenges here. The first one is because Indonesia is, the most of the population are young generation, with the mean of the age of 29 years old. And so they are, I think, overexposed to globalization. And it's actually affect the way of life, their way of life, and the way how they see their national, but most importantly, their local identity that they're living with. And there is a data saying that in general, children in Indonesia were born with bilingual capacity. So they have their local language and also their bahasa, their national language. But eventually, when they are exposed to globalization and modern society, they will have more languages, which is English, basically. But then after they got the third language, there's a tendency where they forget or maybe ignore the local ones. And so the speaker of those local language are diminishing as well. So when people are not speaking those local languages, there will be rare activities related to traditional ceremony that actually can connect them to nature and their ancestor. And so I believe in the third point, there's a cut in the connection between the people of Indonesia with nature and their Ancestor, because lately there have been like a lot of natural disasters happening in Kalimantan for in particular because the effect of maldevelopment, of globalization, and it harms the life of the indigenous people as well. And so when it comes to the language itself, because language is served as a way to communicate with the nature environment. So when something halt the communication, then there is like no balance happening. And so there's a lack of the way in which people used to live with the nature and preserve their nature compared to nowadays. And yeah, oh my God, this is the final slide I have. So that's all I can share about Indonesia, especially the language of environment and Ancestor. I don't know if you guys are happy with the presentation that I have, but if you have any question, just, go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much, Ratna. Before we open up for questions, we really appreciate the time you've taken, and we'll open it up. We have so many questions. I think I saw Andrea first. We'll start with you, Andrea.
Hi, Ratna. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick question regarding like the last part of your presentation of the challenges and the importance of language. Are any efforts done by the government at this moment to preserve the different languages that exist, or any efforts done by their own communities to preserve the language?
I don't know the recent data, but when I was in high school, we have like particular course that is specifically teach to like preserve our local language by having the class. So in educational system, we do have a class where you have to take. It is a mandatory class to learn about your local language. However, when it comes to like broader policy of the government, I do not see any of which in the meantime, but so far it's just the local government who are mostly taking the roles to preserve the local heritage. Because in my hometown, there's a day when you have to use like local outfit, traditional outfit, and then you need to speak local language. So it's like more like a local authority to do the things. Yet is the willingness of the young generation. It's the willingness and the enthusiasm of the young generation to do the things, because eventually, because we are too exposed by technological advancement, we tend to spend time on social media and such things, and we forget the surrounding. And that's why I can see like I have 3 different languages in my hometown. I have my own village language and local language and Indonesia. And if I personally find it hard to speak all of the language, because we don't really like practice it now. That's why it tends to be diminished. Yeah.
Thank you, Ratna.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea.
Mike, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Ratna. Very interesting
Hi.
presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is focused on more modern politics right now. I know there's specifically about West Papua. I know there's a movement in West Papua for either autonomy or independence, and I'm wondering what the national narrative from the rest of the country is around that movement and how they view that whole situation. So whatever your best summation of that is appreciated.
Yeah. That's really a tough question though. I mean, the issue with West Papua, it's really a sensitive one in Indonesia, because it's not only about getting independence from the country, or because Papua in general have already got the spatial autonomy. So the government has given them the what is spatial autonomy to the country, to the island, to manage their own local affairs. But it is like a lot of human rights issue happening in Indonesia, not only in Papua, but another part of Indonesia. Yet the most people are often speaking of Papua most often, especially countries in the Pacific, like Vanuatu or Fiji, or yeah, those islands, because they thought that they share similar experiences with the West Papuan. But I do admit that the West Papuan people are still striving for their rights, historical rights, to be specific. Yet the government of Indonesia still believe that they are a part of Indonesia, and then we have to, like, try to be with them and then avoid those things to happen. So far, like, for example, because I'm from the eastern part of Indonesia, so I kind of feel the same historical background with some of Papuans. One of the efforts of Indonesian government to try to give some changes and opportunities to us is by providing scholarship. So my scholarship program is specially designed to the Eastern communities to have education in abroad. And that's probably one of the way in which government try to, this is your right, you can do your education by the funding from the government. But so far, that's just how I'm able to explain about the specific issue. But yeah, it is a very sensitive, but still very, what is it, controversial one in Indonesia. Well, if you notice that, I think 2 years ago or last year, 2 years ago, there was a structural and racial violence against some Papuan in Surabaya, which is in Java, that is actually accelerates the tension between the society. And then it turns to be like the movement of Black Lives Matter in the US. It resonates to the Papuan Lives Matter in Indonesia as well. So yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I have to run to class, but very interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Dr. Ransom?
You. So I don't quite have as controversial of a question as Mike had. Mine is actually a little bit more simplistic, but it's something that's always fascinated me. I guess many years ago, I had a professor who had done Peace Corps in Indonesia and continued doing most of his research in Indonesia. And of course, Jakarta was featured prominently. And from that, I just have always been amazed by the geography of Indonesia, because obviously the US is huge, but we're not divided by water. And here you have these massive sort of land space that is, you can't drive all the way through. And it just strikes me that maybe this is just my naive US perspective, but is that a challenge from a governance point of view to have so many islands with such distance, with such diversity? How does the geography shape sort of the challenges facing governance of Indonesia?
Absolutely. Like, that's what Indonesians are also striving so far, because, Java is the island where everything is just developed, from education, economic, politics, and all of the stuffs. And so I believe that the government finds it difficult to try to control or to regulate all of those islands in the country, and therefore they have the autonomy. What is it? I forgot to I don't remember the name of the system that they have, but they do have some autonomy to each provinces. So there are 34 provinces in Indonesia. They have their own governance also, and so that's how they coordinate. The national government try to coordinate with the local governance by having some policies that is applied in national and then in locals. And so, but we do, well, in the developing issues, still like education for the eastern part of Indonesia are still very hard to, you know, like to compare with those in West. And so again, it then turns to be like the issue of human rights, you know, because, you know, everybody has the same right to education or to any kind of life. What is it? Rights to live. Rights to live. So one of the issues is tourism, basically. But then we now have the ability to connect all of the islands by having airports and also ports. And so ports itself is actually helps to encourage the economic development in each island by having ports. And so while the the airport helps the development of tourism. And so, yeah, that's how the government, like, you know, working now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
I have a quick question about the Day of Silence that was recently celebrated. Yapi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yapi.
Yapi. You mentioned that was basically on the island of Bali. Has that movement or kind of similar ritual kind of gone to other islands within Indonesia? Just because I think it was so interesting when you said the impact it had just on one day on, you know, carbon emissions, for example. So I was just curious if that carried over into other provinces.
Yeah, because it is a Hindu spiritual ceremony. So, and the majority of Hindu population is in Bali. So far, we only have Nyepi in Bali, like the big one. But we don't really have some in other part of Indonesia, maybe because, you know, like the majority of them living in Bali, so they only have that particular thing in Bali. But we do have another kind of activity that related to like how to, you know, preserve the nature, not to help to minimize the carbon, but like to preserve the nature by conservation. So, for example, in Papua, we do have a local conservation way called Sasi. So Sasi means that we will the people will put like some kind of, what is it? They put something in the ocean or in the forest that prohibit people to like do the harvesting. So in some period of time, the people are not allowed to harvest on the sea or on the forest until the Sasi is over, and then they can, you know, harvest the result. And so that is the one way on how indigenous people try to preserve the nature by not over-consuming the natural resources. But if you, I have a movie like actually they try to talk about this issue in Netflix. The movie title is, I'm just gonna type in the chat box. It is The Island Fate. So this is an Indonesian movie. Try to combine all those conservation activities or nature preservation activities done by indigenous people in Indonesia, in particular island. One of them is the Nyepi one in Bali, and the other one is in Papua. So yeah.
Great, thanks. I'll have to check out that documentary, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a documentary movie. Yeah, it's very nice. I like it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, Ratna. We really appreciate your time. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit about Indonesia. I look forward to one day adding that to my bucket list to go visit.
Of course.
That's what I was going to say. I hope to one day be there.
Oh my God.
But thank you.